Hi, this is Carlos Duringer with Coldwell Banker, and I'm at the Timberlake Country Club, and we're going to talk about flood insurance and how this affects your property. Well, it's 6:04. Should we start?
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming here. Appreciate it here. We're about to start. My name is Carlos Duringer. I work for Coldwell Banker. Next to me is Crystal Wilkes. She works for CHW Insurance. And this is Gerard. She's our flood insurance expert. It all started when we received a letter in my house a couple of weeks ago from the bank saying that if we are now in a flood zone, and if we do not pay for flood insurance, they will pay for us, and the bill was going to be around $2,500. So, yeah, that wasn't a good letter. So I contacted my insurance lady here, Krista, and she referred me to Lisa. Lisa was able to cut that to $400. Obviously I was happier and I didn't have to pay $2,500, but still that's $400 that I didn't think that we should pay, because Lake Murray is a man-made lake, it's not a flood zone. So we had a conversation about it, and that's where I came up with the idea that I'm not going to be the only one receiving that letter. I know that a lot of people will. I'm videotaping this meeting so I can put it out. I know that it's Friday before Labor Day weekend. A lot of people are on vacation. A lot of people can make it. A lot of people just stop in the bar and didn't make it here. And I know that a lot of people, also, when they hear that it's a real estate agent and insurance people, we're trying to sell something. We're not. This is informational, and I hope that clarifies all the doubts that are around regarding this matter. Also, since I'm videotaping here, if you stay here in this room, you are agreeing that you're going to be videotaped. That's pretty much it. All right. Here's Lisa.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Krista Wilkes. My family and I, we own CHW Insurance Group. We're at 8 Mixferry Road, next to Dr. Minico, in that little shopping center there. We're a broker's office, and our office, we sell multiple lines of different carriers with homeowners and auto and boat and anything, personal lines, commercial lines, insurance. And as an insurance agent, I am licensed to sell flood insurance, okay? But I know that's not my area of specialty, and it's very different. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can make huge mistakes for clients and the insureds, and you can also overcharge someone a ridiculous amount of money. And so I learned very quickly that that was not something that I wanted to jeopardize, our reputation on. And I was fortunate enough to have somebody introduce me to Lisa, and we've been talking for probably 2 years or maybe longer. This is the first time we've ever met tonight for the first time. But she's my go-to person. I send her anyone that I have, my current clients, family members, friends, or whatever, I always send them to Lisa. I said, I'm licensed to do this, but I'm not the one who really should be doing it. So I bring that to your attention tonight just to say, if you have already reached out to someone as an insurance agent, just take that into consideration. You want to kind of ask questions, do they know what they're doing? Just kind of do some research. Lisa does know what she's doing, and I'm going to let her introduce herself with her resume, which is awesome. But we're just grateful y'all came tonight. I know it is a holiday weekend, so I'm pleasantly pleased that we have this turnout, and thank you. And spread the word to your neighbors too, if y'all can pass it on. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm a walker. I'm not a sitter. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You're good.
Can everybody hear me if I don't use the microphone?
No.
I'm sorry. My name is Lisa Sherrard, and I've been in the flood business for 31 years. I've only sold insurance for 3. For the first part of my life, career life, I was In the public sector, I was the assistant state coordinator in North Carolina and then the state coordinator in South Carolina beginning in 1994 to 2010. I ran the mapping program, the mitigation program, and the compliance program. So I know how the maps are done. I know what the communities are required, how to build your house. And then in 2010, I went to work for FEMA's NFIP Special Direct Facility, which was in Blythewood, South Carolina at one time, 2010 to 2013. And I learned the insurance side of the house by teaching insurance agents, the underwriters for the companies, how to underwrite the policies. And I like to be really good as a trainer, so I used to read the quality assurance reports. So when underwriter did something, I learned where they made the mistakes. So the QC reports, the quality control reports, I would read and incorporate those findings into my training. Well, when Blythewood sold the contract, CSC sold the contract to a company in Montana, I opened up my own consulting business. And since 2013, I have made a living off of fixing people's flood insurance problems. And after the 2015 floods, a lot of the clients I'd already had as a consultant came to me to help them repair their homes after the flood. And they kept saying over and over again, Lisa, you know more about this stuff than my own agent. And you're helping me get more money back on my claim than my own agent is, because I know the ins and outs of the program. And so I was very successful at that, and they encouraged me to open up my own insurance agency, and so I've been licensed as a producer, was not selling it. And so thanks to them, I'm now selling flood insurance. One of the things that has precipitated this, Lexington County got remapped in July 5th of this year. The mortgage companies are now updating, they're required by law to update the mortgage portfolios, and they're required to notify you if any portion of your property is in the flood hazard area, you're getting a letter.
What's that level?
The letter is going to say,
Level, what's Lexington County level?
the base flood elevation.
363, 362?
It varies from different portions of the lake. The majority of it's going to be 362. Lake Murray, if you're in another jurisdiction, or but in Lexington County, but another municipality may be different. It just depends on where you're at. The level is not the lake level. What they look at is if at full pool, what the 1% chance flood is. That's what we used to call the 100-year flood. So on a 1% chance on an annual basis, you have having a flood hazard. But the lake is not the only thing you need to be aware of. Flood insurance pays a claim for stormwater runoff issues. So if you have a drainage problem from the road going through your property and your house gets flooded, that's 2 or more properties, that's a flood. Or 2 or more acres, that constitutes a flood. And a claim will pay. A lady one day was standing in her kitchen window, and I was kind of reading this article, it was a California paper, and it was kind of an interesting article. She was standing in her kitchen and watched her neighbor's above ground swimming pool collapse. And all that water ran into her house, and her homeowner's insurance would not pay because she did not have flood insurance. So Lake Murray is not the only threat per se as body of water. There are other things that you need to take into account. But what the mortgage company is doing is they are looking to see who has flood hazard now on their property. How many had to get elevation certificates when you built your houses? Okay, good, a couple of you. You don't need a new one. So if anybody tells you need a new elevation certificate, if you already have one, you do not need a new one.
I don't have a copy of it.
You can get it from you get it from Chris Stone down in Lexington County.
Go see him and get a copy of it.
Go see Chris Stone down in Lexington County. He'll give you one if you were required to have one at the time your house was built. Those guys know me, And if you have any questions about me or my business, feel free to ask me. Yes?
What is an elevation certificate? I have a survey that shows the contour lines from 362 and a half. and 360.
Okay, that will be helpful, but an elevation certificate evaluates the structure itself. It shoots the elevations of the structure specific at the ground where the structure is located. Okay, so there, but your plat map will be helpful.
It has the house on the platform.
Right, that will be helpful. Come on in. That's okay. We're not calling you out. Yeah. Do you have attendance? Do you pass it around a list?
Yeah, there is an attendance sheet.
There's an attendance sheet going around, so if you know, make sure you sign in. And yes,
What happens if you built up your property and then built the house on top of that?
well, let me explain to you the way they calculate these flood maps. They did it with the greatest technology. They flew a plane over that shoots 1 million beams down and captures the earth. Okay, all the cars, rooftops and everything. Then they take out the rooftops, the cars, the treetops and all that, and they come up with bare earth. So that's how they did these maps. Your mortgage company has paid a third-party vendor they'll give the whole portfolio and they say, tell us whether this property falls under the guidelines of mandatory purchase. And if you have flood hazard on, it depends on the company too, but if you have flood hazard on your property, they're going to most likely require you to buy flood insurance. You got that letter. Now you can choose to let them place the coverage for you, or you can buy your own. I guarantee you, it'll be $2,500, at least, at a minimum, if they buy the policy for you. Yes.
2015, we had the 1,000-year flood,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No,
Well, we did.
no, not everywhere.
Well, a 100-year flood, whatever you want to call it, but even 2015, and our house didn't flood. Wasn't even close. So now they're shooting maps telling us it's changed. I don't believe them.
Okay. I'm not saying that you didn't have a 100-year flood.
Right.
Most of Columbia, okay?
We had 22 inches of rain in 24 hours.
Right, but we didn't have 22 inches of rain over every house. And that's the important thing to know. The Congaree River
And the
had,
guidelines of emptying the lake,
Right.
opening the gates,
Right.
has that changed?
no, it has not. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that they've taken all that into account when they did these maps. And I'm not here to defend the science that they use or defend the maps. I'm just here to explain to you how your mortgage companies are interpreting them. Okay? There was a time that people could appeal the maps, and that time has passed. Okay?
It was
in
just done in July?
No, maps were effective. There was a time a year ago when these maps were published as preliminary that
Nobody
people
knew
could have
about
challenged the maps.
Yeah, but wait, what if you didn't have a house, what if you didn't have a house on it, you hadn't done all that?
How do you know about it?
Yeah, they put a note, this is not me.
No, I know.
You're just the messenger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm just here to explain to you what it is, and I'll explain to you how the process is. FEMA puts a notice in the paper. Lexington County had a public hearing. They had an insurance outreach meeting,
I never received.
okay, that they advertised. And, so the homeowners association, or, residents need to talk about, maybe there needs to be a communication with homeowners association from the county with regards to flood hazard areas. That may be something that, to improve communications, not just on flood hazard, but on every issue that's coming for us. Anything dealing with zoning, anything. But one of the things that happens is that they do these maps. The mortgage company is going to err on they're required under federal law that if the structure's in the flood hazard area, that they are required by federal law to mandate that you have a flood insurance policy. So the map determination company is guaranteeing for the mortgage company, because there's, that these certifications are accurate. So you say, if they said that your structure wasn't in the flood hazard area, but you had your floodplain on the property, and your structure gets flooded, and you weren't mandated to have flood insurance, and this has happened, that the mortgage company was sued by the homeowner for failure to enforce the Mandatory Purchase Act. So the banks are going to be cautious. The determination companies who's assuming the liability for the mortgage company is going to be cautious. So in most cases, if the flood hazard area is close to your property or close to the structure, they're gonna say it's in. There is a way out of it. There is called a thing called a letter of map amendment, and we do these. It is a waiver, but you have to have an elevation certificate in order to prove you're out. Like I said, your insurance agent's gonna ask you, do you have an elevation certificate? You should tell them I don't need one. Or if they tell you need a new one, you say, I don't need a new one. And if they can't rate it using the old one, then come to me. I don't need an elevation certificate to write you a policy today. Unless you were in the flood hazard area before the maps went into effect. Yes.
I'm a real estate broker, so
Sure.
the question is, upriver, which I know the elevation is higher probably because of the bridges and whatnot. But I've actually sold property up there where the property is not mapped on the flood elevation.
There's no base.
There's no base level, which doesn't make sense to me because, and they're on the lake. I'm a lake.
Listen,
So if that's inaccurate, why is it I mean, that's why people would like to argue, probably not with you,
Yeah.
but with the system, because there are places on the lake that are not mapped to be in a flood elevation that touch the water.
I can tell
Right.
you why, because I've dealt with it, because I had that house 3 years for sale on Victor Road on 391. They claim if Greenwood Lake Dam breaks, all that area on 391 is gonna flood. They won't give it an elevation because they say it will flood. That's the big
is it unnumbered
catastrophe.
A zone is what it's classified as?
Yes.
Or, okay.
It's
That's
flood.
still flood hazard area.
Not every
My
area.
particular one wasn't in the flood zone at all, and it was a waterfront property up there at the bridge, and I was in school, but I know it was in a flood zone. But then as a real estate broker, I look dumb trying to explain that, yes, your property's in a flood zone. It ended up being both the insurance agency, the mortgage broker, everybody said it wasn't, because it wasn't on the map.
Right.
All I'm saying is the maps are wrong, just like anybody else would
Right.
say. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
We did an elevation certificate, it was at 368, and this house still had to carry it. That is upriver. Down here, everything is usually way above 362, and on Lexington County, it's at 363, they
Right.
just went up this year.
Mhm.
They just did another elevation off of Lakewood over in, on 378.
Mhm.
The elevation was at 373.
Mhm.
She was at a base flood at 373, basement level. Her insurance was only $500 for the year because that was not livable space. It all depends if it's livable space or
Yeah,
not.
or basements are always gonna be the lowest.
Yeah, and this was not livable space.
It doesn't matter.
It was
If it's a
elevated.
basement, it's always gonna be level. Yes.
I was gonna say, on the flood zone map, the only part of my property in that flood zone is part of the swimming
You
pool.
can't go by that.
Which is not, okay, well, I am having a surveyor already came to the house to get an elevation survey, but the dwelling itself is not. So
Right.
then why does that put me in the flood zone for the swimming pool?
Well, again, they're looking at the structure and the swimming pool. They can't distinguish whether or not the foundation and the sides of the swimming pool, the concrete around, if that's tied to your house, then they're gonna consider that as part of your house.
So that
Question,
elevation
can-
certificate
Yes.
proves
Here.
that your house is not.
Yes.
Can she fight that?
So that's what I'm getting ready to tell you. If you disagree with the determination, we can file for what we call a letter of map amendment, which is a waiver. That waives the mortgage company. FEMA will make a decision if they say that your property, your structure is in zone X. Then you can turn that into your mortgage company, and your mortgage company is off the hook.
What's the price of that letter?
What's zone X?
Excuse me?
What is zone X?
Zone X is the area outside of the mandatory purchase.
What's
It's
the,
a low risk zone, okay?
So that's what mine says mine's in.
Well, then you shouldn't have any problems. You shouldn't be required to purchase flood insurance.
But I have
AE
a home equity
is
loan,
the
and
flood.
They sent me a letter and said I had to get insurance.
What says you're in zone X?
You what?
What says you're in zone X?
I don't understand.
This,
Did
you
you look
said,
it up on the internet and saw the map that said you were in zone X, or who told you you were in zone X?
An insurance broker told me it was that.
okay. So let me go on here and I'll explain little things. you can still have your structure, you can look at it on the map, you can see it's in zone X, but your mortgage company says it's in zone AE. They want that flood insurance policy to say zone AE. If you buy the policy now, the policy for newly mapped for the first 13 months, right after mapping, you can get what we call newly mapped. You can get a cheap rate between $450 and $524. The 1-day waiting period, okay? And you do not have to have an elevation certificate. You will have this cheap rate for 2 years. And then after that, they're going to gradually go up.
It's gonna dump. We came from Florida, so we know what it goes.
The newly mapped?
Oh,
Well, they've changed the rules a little bit.
did they, cause
Yeah.
it was $400, next thing it was $8, then it was $1,000, then it
no.
was,
It's not, they've changed the rules a little bit. It's only supposed to go up 25% a year. Okay. I understand that, so that's supposed to be $100, okay? So they're supposed to, it's not supposed to double the first year. However, if your structure is not in the flood hazard area, you buy the policy now. You get an elevation certificate that proves you're out. You get a letter of map amendment, we file that. My fee for filing those is $350.
How much is an elevation certificate?
Elevation certificate, they vary in price, anywhere from $350 to $1,000. Okay, it just depends on who you get. Yes.
I just actually closed on a lot in here today, and we had a survey a week ago, and there was a debate about the flood zone level. And Lexington County said 362, and the surveyor went to a meeting that evidently just happened because of what you said. He came back and said it's 362.5, which that's what he marked on the survey. So now we have the 362.5. You just said 362 in this area.
Okay.
What's the truth?
So the truth is this.
Right?
There are maps that say 362. That number is rounded to the nearest foot. Okay? There are places where it's 363. They have a flood insurance study that you can graph it through. Okay? That tells you specifically to the nearest tenth of a foot. The surveyors are required to put the elevations to the nearest tenth of a foot, but it should never be. It should be, if it's 362.5 and it's 362 on the map, it should have been rounded down. It should be less than 362.5, or the rounding rule would have put it at 363.
That went over my head.
Okay, so if there's an error somewhere, because the whole number is on the map, and
It's
you know.
either 362 or 363 is what you're.
Right, so if the number is rounded to, and this way to figure this out, who's right, but if it's 362.4, it should be rounded down to 362 on the map.
My question,
If it's 362.5, then the map should have said 363. So the surveyor may be off just a little bit. It's to the nearest tenth of a foot. Yes,
So
ma'am.
when he's, before you change the subject, so when a surveyor does, and I know that most people probably have a house on their land, but this is a raw lot. If he draws the line on the survey at 362.5, are you saying that was an error? It had to be one or the other.
It should have been 362 or 363. If it's a raw lot, then then what they're looking at, okay, is requiring you to go 2 feet above that to build the house. And that's what they're looking at, is to make sure you're out of that area, okay? Or that the house is above, when you build the house, that it's above that.
I'll never be able to explain it to the guy who sold it.
Listen, have him call me.
I know, I understand it.
But surveyors
Thank
make
you very
mistakes, people make mistakes, yes.
All right. You probably already answered this, but we're not even done building yet, right? We're in Paradise
You need to move
Cove.
your house.
No, it's almost done. Taking forever, but, so when we went to build, we have that line, that 362.5, we're in Paradise Cove. I mean, our backyard is a lake.
Right.
So there's 362.5, which you cannot build on, so we build back around 10 feet.
Okay.
So I'm saying we're probably around 360. Yeah, we're probably around 365,
Okay.
and we got this letter.
Okay.
And so, and looking on the map, you know, this new map, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not in the flood zone, so you're saying what we need to do is
Get
to
a map amendment.
get the insurance?
Okay, so if you get the insurance and we get the map amendment
Right,
and it proves that you're out, they will refund you the complete premium.
okay.
So what happens
We're
if
not.
you don't get
Yes.
your own insurance? The mortgage company is gonna get it
And
for
you are not, let me explain to you, it takes
spend
30 to
500
45
bucks
days.
Yeah, so we need to
You'll get
get
it
our
back.
own, we need to do this now.
You don't,
Yeah.
you need, what you need to do is buy the policy first.
Right,
Get that in place to satisfy the mortgage company.
right,
The second thing you need to do is get an elevation certificate,
right,
and then you file for the map amendment.
okay.
Or just, I think you're not going to be successful, I'll tell you.
No?
No, I said if I think.
Oh, I think you said we're
He's like, what?
Surprise.
If I think you're not going to be successful, I will tell you. Yes, ma'am.
My question is this, and we were invited here because we sell a lot of lake
I
property.
know.
Why is Timberlake getting picked on?
Timberlake's not getting picked on.
There's not been any letters that I'm aware of going out.
Oh, trust me.
They're coming.
Trust me.
First of all, they're already in the house. How many houses are really sitting at 362 in this area?
Okay, it doesn't matter
They all want
vertically.
to
The
spend
flood
money
maps
to
is a
get-
horizontal measurement. The flood map is a horizontal, I know you're frustrated, I
am,
feel it.
Because that means everybody's gonna have to spend money to get an elevator.
No, they don't. No, they don't. You have to listen. If I think, we can challenge this, but the first thing you have to do is get the flood insurance policy. If the bank changes their mind, the policy's canceled and it's a full refund.
Actually, they gave us a deadline in our letter for like
And they
3
are
weeks.
not
So if you don't get in 3 weeks, you get charged. And
Yes.
yeah,
You keep referring to these maps. Where can we see these maps?
The maps are available online on FEMA's website at www.msc.fema.gov. Or you can go down to Lexington County, visit Christopher Stone, and he will show you and pinpoint your property on a map for you. There should also be an overlay on the Lexington County maps.
Can I just say
Yes.
this one more time? And I'm very frustrated because as a realtor, and I sell a lot of lake property, and I've only had two that had to require flood insurance. 2 in 10 years.
I understand, I understand.
All right, so you can't read those maps, by the way. I've been doing this for 10 years. I can't read those maps. You got to call FEMA, be on the line for 45 minutes. You can call Ann Peters over in Newberry. You can call her. You can't read those maps. They're not readable. Your house, until you get an elevation certificate, and they come out and they measure your house and they tell you where it sits in the flood zone, that's irrelevant, you looking at that. I'm just telling you.
Well,
The new maps have building footprints on them.
Let me ask you another
They
question.
are, okay. I'm gonna ask you if you could just hold, we'll talk later after. I know you're frustrated, but I have a lot of other people here who have got a lot of questions they wanna ask too. Go ahead.
I know where the 360 mark is in my yard.
Right.
And it's about 2 feet from the water.
Yes.
All right, and you're saying it's now 360.
It could be 362, it could be 363. It just depends
Okay,
on
well,
where
you're
you're
gonna
at.
do 360. With my lot, that should be about 5 feet from the water.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay.
But when your mortgage company hired the determination company, you can call the mortgage company and argue. We have one, okay, we've had.
So my question is, my house was probably built 10 feet, the foundation of it is 10 feet above that
Okay.
imaginary 363.
And that's the other thing you need to know. It doesn't matter where your habitable space is, it matters where the house touches the dirt.
That's what I'm saying, the foundation, the
Right.
concrete foundation, they poured, put the
Right.
bricks on.
Where that touches the dirt, that elevation matters.
All right, that's about 10 feet above my three
that's-
magical.
Then that's
360.
perfect. You should not be required to have flood insurance.
Good, thank you. That's all I need.
And if you don't have a mortgage, there's no requirement.
No, if you don't have mortgage, no required. If you're selling your house, you should put a policy in place because everybody's asking. Used to be what school zone am I in? That was really important. Now they want to know what flood zone is and how much is the flood insurance. That's the #1 question.
Yeah.
If you're selling your house, put a policy in place before you put it on the market. That way there is no answers. There's no question to the buyer. That policy is transferable to the buyer. Yes.
Okay, you say I can go see somebody named Christopher Stone somewhere.
Christopher Stone, Lexington County, where the building department is.
Building department.
Yep, he's in the building department there, and his name is Christopher Stone.
Okay, and so he would know, he knows the elevation of my house and my lot.
He only knows the elevation of your house if he has an elevation certificate on file. That should be the first stop, okay? And then what you need to do is, if he doesn't have one, look at the maps with him. Let him show you the maps. Let him tell you what he thinks. And then we can try and figure out what we need to do for you. Yes. And I didn't mean to run her off.
No. The only question I have, only because people ask, and I was asking here, most of this started after Hurricane Katrina, didn't it? I mean, as far as these certificates and whatnot, it may have existed before, but it wasn't enforced until Katrina happened.
It has always.
But people want to know why.
Okay, it has always been enforced. Why we have difference now is we have better topography maps than we did when these maps were done before. And that's why you're seeing the changes now. And that's why we're seeing the people that were being required, who weren't required to have it before. Yes.
I have two things. One, reading through the Lexington County ordinances. Even though you're taken out of the floodplain, your mortgage company can still require you to have flood insurance.
They can. Even if FEMA grants a letter of map amendment, they can require you to still carry a policy. Most likely, they're not going to do that. I haven't seen one yet.
Well, my house was originally insured with USAA, my homeowner's thing. They didn't require flood insurance on the mortgage.
Right.
It was not a small mortgage, okay? Refinanced the house, we went to Select Portfolios.
Yes.
Bam, I got a letter the day we closed. 2 days later, I had a letter, you got flood insurance. If you don't get it, it's gonna cost you $3,000, and you're gonna pay, we're gonna charge you for it, you're gonna have it.
Okay.
So be careful when you start thinking about refinancing and the insurance company and so forth, because some are gonna treat you a lot different than other ones.
Exactly.
I have a question on the rates. I had a friend of mine that was in insurance business all his life, and he's saying that there's one price for flood insurance, and everybody's charged the same.
That's correct.
And NFIP.
Right. So all insurance agents use the same manual and the same rate table to write policies. And what Krista was saying to you earlier, if they don't know how to read that manual, because flood insurance doesn't follow the normal property and casualty rules, then they make a mistake. They put the wrong foundation down. They put they don't know that this is a newly mapped property. I had one guy came to me and says, I went to my agent, he told me it'd be $3,000. Okay? I wrote it to him for $450. Same coverage, same deductible, but I knew how to write policy and his agent didn't. Yes.
Is there a difference in your structure? Let's say I build a foundation,
right,
and I'm a little bit over that flood zone, but I'm elevated foundation-wise, and I have vents and stuff that allow water to go through. Is that part of what you can help reduce the flood insurance?
Yes.
I'm still in the flood zone, but I have to protect my house. Either I'm built on stilts, or I have flood vents.
So yes, I do. So what I do for my clients, because I have this background that most agents don't have, that is, I rate your house the way it is, as is, and then I'll do a cost-benefit analysis for you. Well, if you do this, you'll save some money, but it's really not. It's only going to be $100 a year. So if you spend $3,000 putting in vents, that's really not cost-effective. So I'll do that. Go through that with you. At the time of a claim, if you ever have to make a claim, God forbid, and some of you may have houses, more than one house, or you may move into an area where there's flood hazard area. A lot of people leave and go to the beach. I work with you through mitigation on the current policy, the structure, and the claims process. I have one client who got $100,000 more on her claim because I knew what happened and the adjuster couldn't figure it out. So it matters. The water never got into the structure, but the floors in the upper level were warped from water. The adjuster said it was rain seepage in from the house. It wasn't. It came up through the floor, from underneath the structure.
Wow.
So the adjuster didn't figure it out. I figured it out. Because you know what happened? When they opened the dam, they had a storm surge like a tidal wave. It hit the house, splashed up into the upper floor, in the carport, and all that water soaked up into the insulation and whipped up into the floors. So I mean, there's a way. You have to have somebody who knows what they're doing and what they're talking about in the event something happens. Yes.
Can you dispel a myth?
Sure.
I think it's a myth. Because we really don't know what flood insurance is going to pay for, what it's going to cover.
Right.
I've heard that it will never cover anything that's rising water. It will only cover rushing water.
No, that's what flood is.
See, that's, well, a flood is a flood of rising water or is
A
it moving
flood
water?
comes from any source. It
Okay,
doesn't matter where.
that's what it-
Any
that
source.
means.
It could
See,
be
we don't have that
stormwater.
definition anywhere
Right.
available to us.
It's from any source. Okay? If it's 2 or more properties or 2 or more acres.
Okay.
So like I said, the neighbor's swimming pool. You don't often think about a swimming pool.
Rushing water.
Okay, it could be a leak.
Okay.
It could be stormwater runoff coming from the road, because a lot of times people have their houses below the elevation of the road. And you have that water coming off the road. And if it floods there, then that's a flood. It depends on when your house was built, what the coverage is. If the house was built prior to the initial flood insurance rate map, okay, and I'm not sure that varies from community to community. It'll vary from Lexington to Lexington County, Gilbert, all those will have different dates, so I can't tell you off the top of my head what all of them are. There are certain coverage, you get better benefit because there was no maps at that time, so they'll cover things like, washer dryer in your basement. When I say a basement, I mean a basement that is subgrade on all 4 sides. A walkout basement is not considered a basement. So if you can walk out and it's level on one side, that's not considered a basement. Okay, a basement is subgrade on all 4 sides. Yes.
I may be confused on what you said about a flood is 2 or more properties or 2 acres. If a bathroom floods because of a broken.
That's not 2 or more properties.
So that's just water damage.
That's just water damage.
Should be
and that's
covered
covered
under
under
normal
homeowners.
insurance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question. Now, for the policy, say $400, $450, what amount of insurance do you get on that?
$250,000 worth of building coverage and $100,000 worth of contents coverage. You should only get the replacement cost value of your structure or the loan amount. Okay, I would never suggest getting less than the replacement cost. And because this is a newly mapped rated preferred risk policy, there are prescribed rates. So if you have a 150 or 200, we can't go 180. So we would go to the 200. The mortgage company would require at least $100,000 worth of coverage. Contents coverage comes with that. You can buy contents only coverage, but you cannot buy building only coverage under this special rate.
Well, the special rate,
There is a deductible, and it's $1,250. Okay, and that's fixed. After 2 years, if you have to carry this policy beyond year 2, year 3, then you have the privilege of being able to get optional deductibles, adjusting coverages, and we can tinker with things. But for the first 2 years, we can't.
is there a difference between the $100,000 and the $250,000 in terms of cost?
The $250,000 building coverage
Yeah.
and $100,000 worth of contents coverage. If you're a slab, it's $475.
And if you're crawl
If you're a
space?
crawl space, it's $524.
Why is it more expensive?
Because the crawl space is part of the foundation. If the foundation is damaged,
Yeah,
then that foundation is covered. So they're charging you for the foundation.
I got you, okay.
Is there a maximum coverage?
250 is the max. You can buy excess policy and
It's never gonna flood when
right.
you do that.
But again, the benefit to this is if we are successful in getting you removed from the flood hazard area, you do not have to buy the policy. It gets refunded back to you. You buy the policy up front, that full premium gets refunded back to you, yes.
We have to buy this policy by what date? Have a year?
Your mortgage company told you in your letter.
I didn't get it.
Okay. You have 13 months from July 5th to buy the policy. Of this year. I would suggest that the sooner you buy it, the better off you're gonna be, because they do rate increases, typically in October and April. Yes.
What if you already have a policy?
If you have a policy, you're good. You have a preferred risk policy, you should see no change. You just submit that to and you get to continue that until next time, and then you go newly mapped. And
So that's what I'm gonna do.
Yes.
So when I talked to my insurance company for flood insurance, they told me that FEMA has that request, just like you were saying, that kind of cap at $250. But when I got my letter from my mortgage company, they said that they wanted flood insurance to cover the balance of the mortgage.
which is, the most you can buy is $250.
Okay, so that it's not gonna be the balance of the
Right,
mortgage.
that's
It's gonna
right.
be.
Because we don't insure the land. You gotta remember, part of that is the land. We only want the replacement cost value or the balance of the loan, whichever is less, because we don't insure land. So the only thing we're gonna pay for is the replacement cost value of the structure.
But it doesn't matter what the structure costs.
No, it's
It's
just
just that cap of
$250, right,
$250.
yeah, because you gotta remember, land is a big part of that mortgage payment. Land values are pretty
Well,
crazy.
on the lake, land values are.
Right, so the only thing
way-
we're insuring is the structure. Yes,
So
sir.
whatever-
Yes, I guess everybody's aware that, that July 5th date you're talking about is what pretty much triggered this election in county, because that's when the data changed, NAVD 88
Right.
instead of the NGBD 29 data.
Right.
And that's pretty much what's triggered here. I guess Richland, Saluda, Newberry County's been through this 5 years ago. They already had processed this and moved on. Also, I've got a lot of people confusing crawl space air vents with flood vents. They're not the same thing. You
That's
cannot
right.
use Crawl space air vents and they use them as flood vents.
That's right. What do you do?
Square inches
I'm lamps everywhere.
Okay, good.
opening them.
So I'm gonna pass this around. If anybody wants to do a quote or take my card, they want a quote, you can write your information on here and I'll contact you. Or you can just pick up one of my cards and you can come and ask the questions later. Flood vents are not the same as air vents, yes.
Just to clarify. Okay, Roy, we got the letter. My contour line, so your contour line and the flood line, you're telling me that the contour line, even if it's on my plat, is not applicable.
It may have changed based on, that contour line is supposed to follow the flood line that's drawn on your map. If they drew the contour line from the flood map, the previous flood map, it could be incorrect because the flood map may have changed. If they drew the topo line on the map, then that may be the same. Okay.
Somebody don't even look at that.
Right.
Okay, so just to back up a little bit, so what I've got here is, again, I got the letter, they gave me 45, I said, look, I'm gonna challenge this, or I'm looking into it, what do I need to do, because of exactly what you said, but you're telling me to get the insurance,
Right.
get an elevation certificate.
If, when we're looking at this thing, and I'll tell you,
Okay.
I will tell you before you spend any money.
Okay.
If you're gonna keep this policy and you're not gonna challenge it because you actually are, and the structure is actually in, then I would not waste my money, because you got 2 years to get that elevation certificate.
I understand. And then, but anyway, the main thing we need to do is sign up, get the flood insurance, or let you look at our plat and
Right.
to look and see. And then, just to further on, so get the insurance, and we're talking about an elevation certificate, and the fellow's name was Mr. Christopher Stone in Lexington. Would it be any advantage to see him before we meet with you?
No, because you still gotta buy that insurance. It doesn't, and I love Chris to death, but the mortgage company doesn't care my opinion, they don't care what Chris's opinion is, they don't care what FEMA's opinion is, unless FEMA's issued letter of back amendment. And that takes 30 to 45 days from the time it's submitted.
Well, the elevation certificate doesn't help them figure it out.
It's one component. For this, the elevation certificate does not factor into the rates. If they're in a zone AE before the July 5th, and they're in an AE zone now, and they're trying to buy insurance for the first time, they have to get an elevation certificate. But if their prior flood zone was zone X, they do not need one for 2 years. Yes.
That gentleman said he's a land surveyor,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Do we know his name?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Huh?
what's your name?
They want to know your name.
I'm John G. I'm local and y'all are my neighbors. I'm glad to meet y'all.
Oh, can you tell us, you know, a ballpark figure to do elevation certificates?
You know, I really don't quote that unless it's through business, you know, I won't do that here. There'll be different prices, nothing's fixed on that. Every surveyor you contact should have his own price.
Gotcha.
So, any other questions?
Does your mortgage company only have a certain amount of time to tell you?
Yes.
You don't have any?
They sometimes they're running behind. It depends on how big the mortgage company is. You may get, some people may get the letter next month. Some people may get it 4 months from now. Okay? If you think you're in, we can look and see if that's something.
Don't. We
Okay.
bought our house and it has, here's your flood zone, it's not near our house,
So,
but
that's good.
they got one and they live next to us.
Okay.
I do,
Oh,
I do
Your
have a
mortgage company
question.
hasn't caught up with you yet.
Yours seems closer.
Can help me?
You're a foreigner.
That's for the processing the letter
The
of back
corner that's
amendment.
next, like towards our property.
To the waiver to remove the mandatory purchase.
Lisa,
Yes.
what if things happen in the mail? You do not receive that letter. The letter is sent out, it's get lost, it's sent to a different address or something. You do not get that letter, but then you see the bill that's already been paid for $2,500. How do you fight that?
Okay, that's a good question. So what happens if the 3 letters that they send you and you still don't buy the insurance because it didn't come to you, what happens? And they force place that policy on you. Once you buy the 450 or 524 policy, we can reverse it and they will refund you that and cancel that policy for $2,500.
Why are they allowed to charge you $2,500 when you can get it for $450? That's, to me, is a rip-off.
Because this is your incentive to, to take care of yourself. If the mortgage company is going to go to all the trouble to have to force place a policy, they're going to charge you for it.
Bill, you're so sorry.
So they want to get your attention. They want you to take care of yourself. That's the incentive.
well, they have,
So,
well, they have interest in your house as well, so if something were to happen, and you don't have insurance on it, then it's a really
you
good
can buy
deal.
the policy, and if the waiver's granted, or if we later find out the mortgage company made a mistake, and you're not required to have flood insurance, that full premium is refundable.
Are any of the insurances from like a homeowner's perspective, even if you didn't receive a letter from your mortgage company or whatever, are they coming to people that they know that live on the lake and asking and addressing this issue? Or is it only from the mortgage company perspective?
My understanding, what I've heard, the impetus because of the federal requirements is it's typically coming from your mortgage company.
So pretty much
Right.
that's the only place it will come from?
So clarify, you said if you were not in a flood zone, if you were X before the maps of July?
If you're X before and you're now AE, you can get the cheap policy and you do not have to buy an elevation certificate. If you were AE before July 5th and you're AE now, you have to have an elevation certificate. And Christopher Stone probably has one on file. If it was built after, typically around 1989, they'll typically have one on file. So, sometimes things get lost, and they may have lost one, or one wasn't required at the time the house was built.
Can a real estate agent pull this up on the computer and find this out for
They
somebody else?
they can.
Actually,
Go ahead.
we do have a form that we send, and I made only 20 copies of this, so first come, first serve. If you want to grab one, here I have the list of all the people responsible to let you know if your house is located in a flood zone or not, depending on the county. I believe most of here is Lexington County, but I have here all the counties. What we do is when we lease a house, we send this out, and then it comes back to us saying if you're in a flood zone or not. I'm gonna pass it around.
And Chris Stone makes those determinations for free. There are a lot of companies that are going to charge you for those determinations, and you shouldn't pay them. You should get the information for free. If you go on, I have a website that I set up for realtors. It's called BeFloodSmart.com. If you go online to that website, you can get a free determination. You just have to, you have to start like you're gonna do a flood insurance quote, and then you can get the determination part and stop. But there's a form there to tell you whether you're in or out. And so there's free resources out there for professionals to utilize.
And
So, huh?
I'd like to mention one other thing.
Sure.
Don't get confused on this elevation of Lake Murray you see on the news or the newspapers. This is not the elevation FEMA's using.
Right.
Okay? It's not close. It's not even
Right.
close.
When,
It's part of the problem.
Lula Pond, I think was the genetic survey, we said, okay, everybody was using, surveyors were using Lake Murray elevation, we're surface elevation. I said, okay, what's the datum? The surveyor says, I don't know. So Lula Pond went out and surveyed the dam, went down into the well, and they figured out what
monitoring station,
yeah, that's
it's
right.
powerful.
Figured out what the dam was, and now the surveyors can have a conversion factor. But don't listen to what's on the television or radio about lake levels, because that has nothing to do with base flood elevations. They're two different datums.
No,
Well,
if
even
I
that
send
that
this
post
to
says-
Christopher Jones, he will,
Christopher Stone.
Christopher Stone, he will let me know if I am in.
I would not send the Caldwell Bank a letterhead, but I would call Chris.
Yeah.
Okay? Or email him, and he'll tell you.
Okay. Oh, I can call him.
Yeah, you can call him.
He works for the county.
Yeah, he works for the county, huh?
I'm gonna go see him.
I mean, if you go see him, he's gonna sit down with you.
You might want to make an appointment. I bet
I was
he's
just
got
gonna
a lot
say.
of people that
I
want
was
to
just
see
gonna say,
him.
make an appointment, because he does do inspections. Okay?
Make an appointment if you can.
Yes, and some donuts.
Lisa,
Yes.
I do have a question for you.
Okay.
So today, or this year is $400.
Right.
Well, I know that you cannot predict the future, but if you compare to other places that were not in flood insurance and now they are in, I believe that there's some subsidized on
Right.
flood insurance.
Right.
What does that mean in the future?
Okay.
Is there anything like you know, or you kind of like?
So yeah, I can talk about that. I'm on a couple of federal task forces. FEMA's going through a transformation since the Flood Insurance Reform Acts of 2012 and 2014. They've been tasked by Congress to come up with some things. And so we want to help them. And so they have set up these task force work groups to help feed into what they're doing. They are, in 2022, going to completely redo the rating for flood insurance. It's going to change the way it is now. We have structures that are grandfathered, and those grandfathered are going to stay in place. They're typically for structures that were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, maybe, before the initial flood insurance rate maps were issued for a community. Because those structures didn't know that they were going to be built in a flood hazard area. So there were no building code requirements to meet. But the ones built after that, there were building code requirements to be met. And so those structures are grandfathered. So for example, when, if in fact you are now in an AE zone, but you weren't before, you will be grandfathered for that flood zone that you were in when your house was built.
For how long?
Forever.
Okay.
Unless Congress changes the rules.
Okay.
Because you got to remember, part of the reason why the National Flood Insurance Program doesn't follow the normal property and casualty rules is because Congress is its board of directors. Okay?
Next meeting is going to be with a congressman.
So that's the board of directors. But you have an opportunity to buy a really cheap policy, and they're giving you time to get everything figured out. Back in 2012, there was a couple of years there that one guy went to sell his house, and the buyer was, his policy was $800, but the new buyer was going to have to pay $23,000. And Congress fixed that because they heard the National Association of Realtors. So it's really important that you buy this policy now. If you buy the policy from me, I will do all the legwork for you. I will figure out whether or not you're eligible for the letter of map amendment. I have a consulting business that processes those letters of map amendment. I take care of it, and I take care of the cancellation once it's issued. So there's a no-brainer as far as you're not having to train me to what I need to do, because I know. If you currently have a flood insurance policy, I don't sell homeowners, I don't sell auto. If you want to change agents and let me be your agent, I'll help you figure that out too. But the interesting thing is that you've got to respond now to those letters, because if you don't act quickly, then you're going to end up with in a little bit of a pickle. If you've got a slip of paper, if you want to that you filled, you want to quote, just leave it up here on the table when we're done. Okay.
Take mine down.
Okay. There you go.
There you go, yeah, take that.
All right, you want to pass that board down? You can try it. You want to pass the board down to somebody else?
Okay, anybody else?
There you go. And I'll be happy to give you a quote next week. We got a holiday on Monday. We're going to be working, but we'll get you a quote to you next week. If we have any questions, we will be calling you to ask you those questions.
Embarrassing.
So how long has it taken if some people don't have their letter from the mortgage company yet? I mean, you're saying they're coming, so.
Some companies are, it depends on which company you have. The bigger companies, they're on the ball. Those letters are out in the mailboxes, and unless yours got lost,
When you
which
say
is
the
happening.
bigger companies,
Yeah,
explain.
Bank of America, Wells Fargo, those big companies, if you went through a savings and loan, they may be a little bit slower.
Is that better? I can see your eye. I'm like, that is driving me. I know
You
it's.
have your card doesn't have a mailing address. I'm here on behalf
Oh,
of
yeah,
a couple of
sure.
other.
It's P.O. Box 290666.
Which one?
2906.
366. 666. Columbia. 29229.
29229. Thank you.
Is that your warrant?
Sure.
You already have a
No,
policy.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Have
I would still
financed 4 or 5
check
years ago.
with this guy to see.
My bill was going up slightly.
I think you are, because I looked at your AE.
Can I cancel that policy, get a new policy through the remapping, newly mapped?
The AE
You go back and start over.
So we gotta talk about why you're paying, what you're, I need to look at policy. If you're not ready for it, then
Okay.
I would not go by what I
Let's just look
see.
at
I
how
would
it's-
go by this Chris Stone.
$50 every time I try.
Christy, you want to lower this one too?
Yeah.
If you want to, have you looked at your policy, I'll just look at it.
I would check his prints, they got.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to leave you on this happy Friday night. And
Thank you so
you're welcome to take my card. Did everyone get a card that wanted one?
I'll take some of your cards.
So that's the end of our meeting. If you have further questions or need more information, you can always contact Lisa or me. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.